a division of Adele Media.
Gotta be found yourself. You don't need nobody else. Gotta have time to yourself. You don't need nobody help.
Hello, Detroit, Michigan, and listeners across the country joining us everywhere. I'm Rochelle Riley, live on 910 Superstation, Detroit's only urban talk station. And I want us to take a minute to remember 9/11. I cannot believe that it's been 16 years since that day that happened. That was my second day on the job at the Detroit Free Press as a columnist. And I remember for some reason that day I was wearing all black. And the very first thing I did was raced out of the newsroom to go pick my daughter up and bring her back. And one of the things I have asked myself in these past few weeks as we've dealt with all of this turmoil around the country and around the world is, are we any better off than we were then? Are we still as vulnerable as we were 16 years ago? So please feel free to call in, 313-209-9000. I just want to make sure that we're remembering those who died and those who fought to make sure that we didn't have a lot more deaths. And for those first responders who do what they do, we're going to be talking a little bit later with a first responder, not to a 9/11 situation, but to the hurricanes. But let's always keep those folks who survived in our prayers, because you never move past something like that. You just learn to live with it. So the news is full. Bill Schuette, apparently, according to WLNS, is going to announce tomorrow that he's running for governor. As you know, Bill Schuette, the Attorney General, has now filed charges, the only charges filed in the Flint water poisoning. So I guess the question is he going to be using this case for his campaign and see whether he plans to surf Flint water to victory, or if he's going to try and keep these things separate and convince us of the other reasons he should be governor. So I'm hoping we'll have him on later in the week. And tomorrow is Tuesday, 9/12, which means in Detroit, out of all the most important things that could be important, Kid Rock is going to open up the Little Caesars Arena. It's caused some controversy because some folks don't think that he was the right person to represent the opening of this arena, which is more than an arena because it represents this big, new, shiny toy in Detroit, and there's supposed to be neighborhoods connected to it. And I tell you what I hope. I hope folks don't go out in the streets tomorrow and protest Kid Rock because, number one, it's not going to stop the concert. And number two, I think that there are other things that are more important. I'm sorry, but I wrote this in the Free Press last week, and I'll say it again. We've got teachers who aren't being paid what they're worth. We've got insurance being too high, and nobody has sued the insurance companies yet. We've got kids graduating high school without being able to read. We don't have enough jobs for the number of people we have. So I really don't want us to get so overly excited about a self-proclaimed redneck rocker, his words, not mine, that's what gets us excited. I mean, we just had a primary where we couldn't get 15% of our people out to vote, but this is what we want to go out and protest. So we'll see what happens, but I'll tell you what, if this is what we continue to say is important to us, Donald Trump is going to be reelected in 2020, and we're still not going to have much progress. And we've got a call already on the line. We're going to bring some folks in to talk, but one of the things I want to make sure that we get to tonight is about the hurricane. I've got family on the East Coast. We've got people in Florida. We've got people in Georgia. We've got people in South Carolina. We're talking 5 or 6 states right now that have had a whole lot going on, and we've had deaths already, in addition to billions of dollars worth of damage that started in Texas with Harvey and moved to Irma, and there's tornado watches all over the place. So I want us to be very careful about how we help because, you know, there are scammers and hackers and crooks out there, but I want to make sure we're helping and that we're keeping people in our prayers. And one person I've been keeping in my prayers, and this has been very important to me, is a friend of mine who was a journalist, and he stopped being a journalist so that he could do more than what he was doing. He went from telling stories to changing the story for a lot of young people. He's the founder of a program called COP, Knowledge, Opportunity, and Prosperity, KOP. His name is C. Ron Allen. He runs this mentoring program down in Palm Beach County. And as a reporter, he grew frustrated seeing kids making bad choices and ending up in the system and the system failing them. And he thought those young people that did stupid things that could have been prevented with a positive male influence in their lives, he wanted a program to provide that influence. So he and 2 male friends did that, and they started out with 3 young men. That was in 1991. COP is now in its 26th year with 700 program graduates and indirect support of about 4,000 students in Palm Beach County. So he's worth a story and worth being on the show just for that. But my friend C. Ron, who also owns two papers, the Delroy Beach Tribune and the Boca Raton Tribune, I'm talking to him today because when other people were leaving and getting out of Florida, he decided to stay because he's a first responder and he's waiting to go and get out after the hurricane and the storm and the surge to help people. So I want you to please, please help me welcome C. Ron Allen, my friend out of Florida, to the Rochelle Riley Show. C. Ron?
Hey, Rochelle. How you doing, my sister?
I'm great, and I'm so proud of you, and I thank you for being on the show. What are things looking like down there?
Well, let me first take a moment to pay respect to all those who died on September 11th, and let's not forget the first responders, Rochelle, who went into harm's way, many whom are suffering today. Having said that, all things considered, we have to consider ourselves very blessed again. We've had some close calls over the years, but over the last 10 years or so, we've had a few hurricanes to come through here, Rochelle. But this one, again, spared us in Palm Beach County. At least Palm Beach and Broward County, we were spared the wrath of Hurricane Irma this time. The Keys, Monroe County, and Dade County, they were impacted severely. But for Palm Beach and Broward County, we've had a lot of downed trees. We've had some flooding. Much of today I spent just removing debris and trees from people's homes and people's cars. But for the most part, as of now, no lives were lost. Like I said, we had some property damage, but not a lot. Thank God.
Well, I'll tell you, there have been 8 deaths in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. There's billions of dollars worth of damage in Texas and Louisiana, and this is not over yet. But the question I want to ask, because all of that is stuff that will be going on for the next few weeks as we try to assess how bad it is. You know, even with the first responders on 9/11 and the firefighters and officers who do this every single day, day in and out, 365, what made you decide instead of leaving? You know, you sent me a picture of your car wrapped to perfection, you know, to try and protect it. But what made you decide that, you know, I'm going to stay so I can be here to help people when this is over?
Well, as you know, Rochelle, I did 30 years in the United States Navy, and one of the things we're trained to do is to help in disasters and catastrophes like this. So a group of us, I'm retired now for about 3-4 years, and a group of us who are in the retired ranks, they still calling us from time to time to help out. So it's just the right thing to do. You know, as a newsman, I was one of those who believe in helping, and nothing has changed. Part of my DNA. So when the call came out in fact, I got a call about a week ago asking was I prepared to go to the Keys as a first responder. That was before the hurricane struck. I said, sign me up. And unfortunately, they did not need me then, but I'm on standby now to go to the Keys or possibly the West Coast.
Well, we want you to absolutely stay safe while you're out there doing that. And as you've watched the coverage down there, which is closer in, and as you've gone from place to place, how bad does it look?
Well, a lot of what you've seen on TV is more so in the Miami-Dade County or even Homestead, which is Monroe County down in Key West. I'm in Palm Beach County, and like I said, it's been bad. We had some flooding. We had some downed trees, but not as bad as you've seen in Texas or even again in Key West. And let me just add that we have had a few deaths overnight in Monroe County, and I think we had 1 or 2 in Dade County. But a lot of these deaths, Rochelle, could have been prevented had folks just heed the warnings of authorities. So they're not just folks innocently just sitting by and got struck by a storm.
Wow. I was really surprised when the governor, I mean, literally, he stood and said, we cannot help you. If you stay here, you're on your own. You need to leave. And there were still people, and some of them did leave at the last minute, but there were people who said, no, we're going to stay on boats. Somebody was talking about staying on their yacht because they didn't want to leave property. It amazes me.
That's human nature. Back when I was a reporter some years ago, I experienced the same thing. There were people who chose to stay on a boat. Now, it's not even on land. They were on a boat, and 70, 80, 120-mile-an-hour winds coming your way, and you're going to stay on a boat. You need surgery. You need some surgery.
Now,
but overall, let me just say also that I applaud our governor. He was a true statesman, a true leader. He exhibited leadership from the start, and he truly represented what we're looking for in a leader. Not so much someone I would say this about on a regular basis. Anyone who knows me knows as an independent, that's who I am. But I call the shots when it's made, when I need to. And this governor deserves credit for what the leadership he exemplified during this election.
Now, one of the things during this tragedy, I knew what you meant. Yeah. One of the things that people are watching and particularly paying close attention to some of this overnight weather is some sense of how long this is going to last. Have they told you that once the winds died down a little and the damage wasn't as bad as it was, even though the storm is headed up to Georgia and headed towards Atlanta, are they telling you that, you're safe, it's time that you can go back, or people can go back even in Miami? I mean, you're not that far in Fort Lauderdale from Miami.
Well, I'm 60 minutes from Miami. I'm coming out from Miami about 20, 25 minutes north of Fort Lauderdale. We had curfews up until this morning. Those curfews have been lifted in all three counties, and people are returning to homes. In fact, people began returning early this morning. It is safe in Palm Beach and Broward counties for folks to go back to their dwellings.
You're listening to Rochelle Riley on the Rochelle Riley Show. I'm talking with C. Ron Allen. He's a former journalist and a dear friend who decided to stay behind when they were warned to leave the county where he lives, because he's a first responder with 30 years of experience in the military. And I'm glad you avoided the worst of it. That my prayers were answered because I was praying for you. I know that Miami and Key West and some of the Keys were not as lucky, but it still wasn't as bad as what happened in Texas, and we're still not sure what's going to happen next. But I do want to thank you for coming on and talking to me about it, and I also want to take a moment to publicly thank you for what you do with COP, because, leaving daily journalism and doing something where you literally are just going to work to make sure that young black men become the grown black men they should is worth applauding, and I'm so glad that you've been doing that for a while. Is it still as fulfilling as it was when you got started?
As day one. Rochelle, someone asked me this back in 1991 when we got this thing started. Had I, been doing this, would I've been doing this 26 years later, I probably would have said, you're nuts. But it's just, again, this is one of those things that became a part of my DNA. It's just human nature for me to do this. I get so much reward from doing this. It is so fulfilling knowing that you can touch one young man's life, one young lady's life, and change their trajectory. It's just so fulfilling what I do every day. And by the way, I'm still an active journalist, may not be on the big league, but I'm still providing news on a daily basis to folks in Boca Raton, Delray Beach, and Boynton Beach.
Oh, that's 3 papers. Or is it 3 audiences and 2 papers?
All right, that's correct.
Oh, good. Well, let me tell you, you should never leave journalism because you're one of the best. I'm glad you still do all 3 things that you do. And I want to thank you again.
We go way back.
We go way back, and we got a lot of youngins that aren't our youngins because we believe in taking care of our next generation. As Bob Maynard, the first black newspaper editor in America, said, each one, teach one. We got to make sure people.
Reach one.
That's right. Make sure that you get out and do that. So thank you for doing that. I want to thank C. Ron Allen for coming on to the Rochelle Riley Show and for doing all of the great things that he does. That makes me so proud when my friends are doing the kinds of things that they're doing. I'm so glad he's safe. I'm so glad that Palm Beach County didn't get what some other places got. And as you continue to look out for our neighbors and each other and finding ways to help, just know that even though it was spared some of the brunt of what was going on in Texas, there might still be people down there who need help, particularly the elderly. And now that we moved on to Irma, don't forget what Harvey did, and please continue to help people in Texas. I want to take just a minute. Thanks again, C. Ron.
Anytime, Rochelle.
Thank you. I want to take a minute to do a little Monday evening quarterbacking. How about those Lions? Did you go to the game? Did you watch? Or are you boycotting because you're a member of Team Kaepernick? Some folks, including Sean King, the New York writer, is calling for a full boycott of the NFL, and he's got people following NFL boycott on Twitter. I did not go to the Lions game. I love the Lions like I have a brother playing for the team. I love Coach Caldwell like he's a family member. And I think that I say this every year so people go, okay, Rochelle, but I think that, this is a year they're going to the playoffs and can make a run for the Super Bowl. And I was disheartened to see that even before we played our first season game, people were saying that the coach stepped down, and I wasn't happy about that. But I didn't go to the game because I have been really torn about what to do about a First Amendment that doesn't apply to everyone and a freedom of speech that isn't applied universally. So I'd like to think that if we're going to let anybody say what they should feel and do what they feel is right, that everybody should have that right, including Colin Kaepernick. We've got a call on the line. I don't know the name, but I'm going to find out in just a second. If you did go to the game or if you watched the game, give us a call and just tell us what you think and whether, this is one of those protests that's not necessary because it's not going to make a difference, or whether you think it's important just for people to know how you feel in support of Kaepernick, who ought to have a job. John, you're on with Rochelle Riley.
Yeah, this is Rochelle Riley. Fine news journalist. I appreciate you. And then the gentleman that you had on your guest, he's really to be commended for
Thank you.
the service that he's doing for the community and so forth.
Thank you for that. I appreciate
that. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for Mrs. Rochelle Riley for bringing him on. Now, listen. You know what, Ms. Rochelle Riley?
Yes, John?
I'm totally disagree with you by demonstrating, protest, and agit. That's what this country is about, Ms. Riley.
Mm-hmm.
You disappointed me about that because if they hadn't did it, you wouldn't be where you at right now and so forth. So you kind of start off on the wrong foot with me about that demonstrating and so forth. They should demonstrate against that telephone racist signing the rebel flag and this Nazi Germany running around here talking all that racist stuff, and you got a problem with the people demonstrating so forth?
Well, thank you, John, for calling in. Why don't I try to answer your question about that? Thank you, John. So here's the thing. I don't have a problem with protests, so I don't want anybody to call in trumping and saying that I've done more than what I said. What I said was I didn't see how it would be effective for people to go out and protest this, which they're not going to stop, but we're not protesting some of these other major issues that really do make a difference. Let's hear from Judy, who is on line 2. Hi, Judy. You're on with Rochelle.
Hello, Rochelle, and thanks for taking my call. I'm a first-time listener since you've taken over this spot. I guess I have 2 comments. One, you made reference to the upcoming protests on the Kid Rock. Actually, I agree 100%. I think, we have to be more effective in our protests and how we use resources. I don't think much will change, and there's so many other issues that I think warrants our support. I think the only way to speak to that issue is don't support, because we need to hit from a financial perspective. The Colin issue, I support him 100%. I am boycotting the NFL, and I also feel, unfortunately, in order for it to send the message that it needs to send, it goes even to the Kid Rock stadium issue, because folks aren't going to pay attention until you start hitting them in the pocket. And so when we start losing, or when they start losing money, revenue, and shares, then maybe they'll take it seriously. And it also reminds me, I was an infant at the time of the Muhammad Ali protest, but I'm reminded, and as I heard stories, how, we celebrated him years after the fact, but even as an African American, how we did not support him in his effort and his cause for what it stood for. And now here we are in 2017, and really it's history, in a sense, repeating itself. And so for folks to, not support him and his belief when, and I look back and what do most people do even during that anthem?
Now, Judy,
But
you
now
raised
we
a
want
really
to
you
single
raised
him out.
you raised a really good point, because imagine this: what if instead of going and boycotting Kid Rock, people had stood out in front of Ford Field supporting
Right.
Colin Kaepernick? That's something that people would see. Television cameras and the NFL. Don't know whether it would still make a difference, but at least you're standing up for something in a way that means something bigger. That for me it is not about who gets to sing at a stadium. We have other stadiums and arenas. If we're going to start saying who can sing where, there's a whole lot of people that some folks would not like that we let perform in other places. So I really appreciate your call. Thank you so much. We've got one more call we're going to take before we get to our guest, and that's Walter on line 1. Walter, you're on with Rochelle Riley.
Hello, Rochelle. It's a privilege to talk to you. I used to see you on that program on Channel 56 with Nolan Finney.
Well, the honor is mine.
And you guys were sparring with each other. I used to love it. Those big debates y'all used to have, y'all ended in peace.
Always.
But, and by the way, I'm glad he's on the station. We bring some balance to the station instead of all black, mostly percentage of our greater percentage for black talk show hosts. By the way, who played the race card almost nonstop. But anyway, what a waste of time. These people need to go get a life and quit protesting stuff. And they're going to protest. They need to protest. By the way, they're 8 years late. They should have been protesting Barack Obama, the worst president in U.S. history, who has put more blacks back on food stamps, welfare, and blood banks and food banks. The plight of black has not gotten no better with Barack Obama. So they're 8 years late. They should have been protesting then, but they missed out on their visitation.
Okay, Walter, but do you have anything 8 years later to talk about now? Is there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Hail Trump, build that wall, and make America great again.
Well, we thank you for your call. Thank you, Walter. I hate to leave one more hanging, so if our guest doesn't mind, we're going to bring in Roy real quick, and then we'll get to our guest. Roy, you're on with Rochelle Riley.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you.
I don't understand. I feel Colin Kaepernick, and I support him. But I don't get how come people did not protest R. Kelly when he came here last month to a sold-out show. Nobody said anything about it. No protest, no anything.
I don't know that there were any actual protests with signs and people out demonstrating, but there were a lot of people on Facebook and who did stuff through social media to complain about it. I saw a lot of that, but it's an interesting question. I wonder why there wasn't a crowd in front of the arena. In front of Shane Park, and I think some of that has to do with just sort of selective protest. There's some things that people want to make sure they're saying something about, and some things that they don't. And I don't think you can sweep some things under the rug and not do others, because the rug is big enough for all of it. But it's a good question, and I appreciate your calling and asking. But I do want to get to our guest, because this was a big week in Detroit, and only because of a possibility. Amazon, the huge online retailer, has decided that it's going to build a second headquarters, Amazon H2. And like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Jeff Bezos has decided that he's going to get RFPs from cities across the country, and then, like a golden ticket, some city is going to win. So I have no idea what's going to happen. I have no idea whether some of the people who think Detroit doesn't stand a chance are right. I don't think so. But anyway, what I wanted to do was bring in someone who knows Detroit and knows tech and knows Amazon, peripherally. I don't think he's ever worked for them. And that's Ned Stabler. He's the CEO of TechTown Detroit, the business incubator founded with Wayne State University in 2000 to help entrepreneurship in business and tech and digital. And I'm so thrilled to have you on the Rochelle Riley Show.
Well, Rochelle, thanks for...
Applause.
Wow, look at that. All the thousands of people here in the studio are cheering. I'm excited to be here. Thank you very much, and congrats on the new show.
Thank you so much.
Very cool.
Thank you. I'm having fun. So here's my thing. Everybody wrote about this last week, and I wrote a column saying that maybe we ought to treat Amazon like the Olympics and try to get them to come and build the things that they need, that we need. I went to Torino, Italy, And, they got the Olympics. Remember the Torino Winter Olympics. And so they got all these great things built because they needed them for the Olympics. Now, I know it's a stretch, and I'm not suggesting that we go after an Olympics. Some people, of course, who don't really read the whole column thought that I wanted to bring the Olympics. I said, no, I want us to bring Amazon. But if they do what we're hearing from some of the folks who are pulling together the proposal and have multi-sites for their campuses, and, of course, their people will have to get from site to site, by God, we could have mass transit, something that we haven't been able to do here in this region forever. But so I wanted to get a sense from you, first of all, whether Detroit even has a shot.
So there's really three important questions here.
Okay.
So the first one is could we? Yes. Do we have a shot?
Yes.
And the answer to that is absolutely. We certainly have a shot. We have a lot of assets and attributes that they're looking for. Transit is the one that people have focused on pretty heavily that's lacking. But there are a lot of other things that we have going for us. First and foremost, Amazon, very importantly to their business model is logistics. And there is nowhere in the world that has as many logistics experts who can do just-in-time delivery for products than there is right here in Southeast Michigan. So we've got that going for us, which is huge. We have proximity to airports, proximity to markets, Midwest locale, all those kinds of things, which are good for us. That transit, the quality of life, those other things that they're looking for, those are still big negatives.
Well, this is my thing. I plead with Jeff Bezos. I didn't send him a letter, although I may just write an open letter.
Text him. Can you text him?
You know what? I probably could.
Yeah.
Faster than I could probably get him on Twitter. Faster I could get him in a letter. But the question I asked in my column was, how would you like to go down in history as one of those people who helped turn around a major American city? We've got folks who are doing that. The Illiches are doing that. Dan Gilbert is doing that. The more the merrier. I mean, there's plenty of stuff to do to become a part of this comeback so that you can point and say, well, I helped get that done. That's not something that would be in an RFP. That's not something that you put in for cities to do. But that's the kind of thing that, he saved an American newspaper. Look at how he turned around the Washington Post, which is stunning. I think that, is that just too Pollyanna-ish?
No, the intangibles is actually a really big part of it, and we've got that going for us. But, people focus on, there's business reason X, Y, and Z, and they make it out as if these corporations have, just one big spreadsheet that they put all the numbers in. And I know the New York Times did a piece over the weekend.
I was just going to mention it.
Sorry, didn't mean to jump on that.
No, you're right.
But where you put in all these various factors and it weighs it all out. But the one thing you can't put into a spreadsheet is the intangible. Does Jeff Bezos want to be, and no offense to Dan Gilbert or Mike Ilitch or Peter Karmanos or you fill in the blank or Rip Rapson or any of my funders, I want to make sure I cover my bases, does he want to go down in history as someone who helped fuel the rebirth of a great American city? That's a huge thing. That'd be part of the narrative.
That is big. That's what I plan to push. But you mentioned the New York Times piece, so I did want to mention that because it was actually excellently done. And what they did was went down the list of things that would be important for a city to have. And they would throw it out, and then they'd say, okay, this is who's left. All the cities that are possible, like area where job growth is strong. Okay. Well, then you have to skip that. They're gone. And then you have the right labor pool, and then you skip that. And they went down the list. And, of course, Detroit only lasted like one round.
Yeah, the unemployment situation and the growth situation killed us pretty quickly.
But that doesn't make any sense. That's the only thing that said, okay, if you look at numbers, that makes sense. But if you're bringing 50,000 jobs, that really helps the unemployment numbers. So
yeah, when I used to work at the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, we used to argue all the time with folks who were doing those business climate surveys. And I actually wrote my grad school dissertation on this. And we always used to get knocked for high unemployment rates in Michigan for having, a bad business climate. But that's just backwards. Actually, those are outputs. And frankly, having a churn in your labor market is really good for entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Were you listening to Rochelle Riley on 910 AM Superstation? I'm here with Ned Stabler, CEO of TechTown. We're going to take a break and then come right back and talk a little bit about Amazon, but a little more about Detroit and where it is for the next Amazon. So we'll be right back after the break and take your calls.
You ain't never switched up. You're more than enough. Tell me, is this love, baby? You're like a drug, baby. I can't let go, no.
This Total Traffic Report is brought to you by Red Cross. The Red Cross depends on financial donations to be able to provide disaster relief immediately. Help people affected by Hurricane Harvey by visiting redcross.org, calling 1-800-RED-CROSS, or texting the word Harvey to 90999 to make a $10 donation.
We are a part of a public-private partnership to place more than 40 kiosks throughout Wayne County to allow you to pay your essential bills and delinquent taxes in one safe, convenient location.
DTE Energy introduced this kiosk program to allow Metro Detroiters greater freedom to pay your energy and other bills when and how you desire by cash, personal check, or credit card.
At the Detroit Water Department, we are pleased to join our friends so you can now pay your water bill on the DivDat kiosk network.
The kiosks are located in our respective downtown offices as well as Rite Aid stores and community centers across the county.
As the president of the DivDat kiosk network, our mission is to stamp out convenience fees and help you.
Make sure to take advantage of the no-fee kiosks to stay current on your tax, energy, and water bills. Stop by today to learn more about how to enter into a payment plan in the newly extended interest rate reduction program.
Please visit us at DTE Energy,
the Wayne County Treasurer's Office,
or DWSD. We're here to help.
910 AM Superstation, giving you exactly what you need by any means necessary.
I used to have a program, it was called Project Exposure, and the first thing that we asked was, tell me what you want to do with your life, or the things that you're interested in. And the people, the kids say, these are 14 to 17-year-old kids, architect, culinary chef. None of the things that you think that they want to be, basketball player, football player, rapper, so forth and so on. And then you ask them, okay, well, what are you exposing yourself to in regards to, getting more information about that? What do you watch on TV? BET, MTV, none of the things that are in line with, none of them were, wanted to be culinary chef or watching the Food Channel, right? Because they don't believe that those things are attainable, But again, like you said, once you started to talk to them and get more information about them, then the barriers started to, decrease.
Exactly.
910 AM Superstation, the voice of Detroit.
Gotta have time to yourself. You don't need nobody help. Gotta be fine with
Rochelle Riley on the Rochelle Riley Show on 910 Superstation, the only talk urban radio station around. And I am on with Ned Stabler, the CEO of Techtown. We're talking about what Detroit is ready for. And we want to take a quick call from Tom. Hi, Tom. You're on with Rochelle Riley.
Yeah, good afternoon to you. Good evening to you both. I sure hope that Detroit lands Amazon. 50,000 jobs. Let's go ahead and face it. 50,000 people in the city are not going to get those jobs. I'm honest. But, the bottom line comes down to, as you said, it would help the unemployment rate. But, first of all, there needs to be a trained workforce, ready to kind of step into those jobs when a company locates here. Because, like back when I was a much younger person, and then back when dinosaurs walked the earth, if we could get a job without, if you've got a lot of brawn, maybe just a little brain, you could have went to one of the plants. But this, in terms of industry, for lack of a better word, has shifted so far. I don't care if you want to go right or left, but this whole technology thing, it has changed the world. There's so much, technology now in the plants that, have taken up, jobs that people once did and that kind of thing. And but I hope we can, put our best foot forward and we go ahead and get this thing right and, continue this forward march.
Thank you so much, Tom, for calling in to the Rochelle Riley Show. I'm talking with Ned Stabler from Techtown, Detroit. And, God, Tom is absolutely right. But here's the thing. And I'm not giving up hope on Amazon. So when I say this, I'm still beating that drum. But even if we think that it's going to have to be the next time, this is a great opportunity for us to start thinking about what Detroit is, who Detroit is, how we get ready for the next time. So let's talk, Ned, a little bit about where Detroit is and how we're positioned to do what. Who are we?
Who are we? So, I'm glad Tom brought up auto plants. And they used to be able to, with a high school diploma and even not, walk across the street and get yourself a job. He also brought up the point that if Amazon comes into the city with 50,000 jobs, that a lot of those jobs aren't going to go to Detroiters. In fact, the majority of them aren't. Let's just be honest. Yeah. He mentioned workforce, and he's absolutely right. In the city of Detroit, these are not plant jobs of the old school. These are the jobs. These are headquarters jobs. So they're very different from warehouse jobs that Amazon just announced a plant here as well. They are today's plant jobs in that they have the highest multiplier effect for other jobs. It used to be that an auto plant, a factory worker job, created 8 other jobs in the economy. These won't. They'll only be 4.5, but that's the best we got these days. Today, auto plant jobs don't create that many. So not as many are going to go to folks in the city, but it's going to create, a couple 100,000 other jobs that a lot of them will go for folks in the city.
And to make Mayor Mike Duggan happy, some of these people could live in Detroit rather than live out and about. We're talking young people who want to live in the city, want to live in city centers, want to live close to what's happening. He's trying to build population. So if you bring in people from someplace else, but they move to Detroit, that's a plus.
You start getting to the second question, which is, should we go after an Amazon, right? Because what's it going to take to get them? Wisconsin is going to offer them their firstborn children, right? People open up, blood. What do you want? You can have it. And so it's going to get expensive. They're not ever going to pay taxes. Quite the opposite. They're going to get paid to come here, and they'll get free land and free improvements and that kind of stuff. But again, these aren't warehouse jobs. These aren't a stadium. That this data clearly shows you don't get your money back from those types of investments. These types of jobs, especially 50,000, where a number of them, tons of them, thousands of them, will live in the city, will pay personal income taxes, will generate revenue all around them. Those the data's pretty clear. They pay for themselves, and they're worth going after.
That's exactly right. Now, I want to get back to the question of Detroit, and we'll leave Amazon just for a second so we can find out, what should we be doing? What should we be going after? Even with Michigan and the whole idea for the longest time with Debbie Stabenow, it was the batteries. And, people are trying to figure out who we are, what we should be doing, and where our next big chunk of jobs are. What does that look like for Tech Town? I mean, as you look out over the landscape, what do you see for Detroit's future?
Yeah, batteries, that's still a real thing. Advanced.
And I don't mean to say it like that. Oh, my God, I hope the senator doesn't think that. But I think batteries are...
Right. No, but the whole advanced mobility sector is a huge part of our future. I mean, we're going to have... You don't just go and create things out of whole cloth. You don't say, I think we're going to be... And you throw a dart at a board and decide, we're going to be the head of, in charge of X. You have to look at what you have. It's what assets you have and how can you better use them. And the answer is, we have a mobility research cluster here better than any place in the world with hundreds and hundreds of advanced R&D sectors. So advanced mobility is going to be a huge part of it. But we also have to remember that now there's more lines of code in a car than there is in an F-16.
Wow.
Cars are technology plays. So more and more it's going to be technology associated with mobility, not just, bending metal and, extruding plastic and things like that.
And, I'm talking with Ned Stabler, CEO of TechTown, on the Rochelle Riley Show, 910 Superstation. I have talked to people so many years and so much about how the auto industry, and they don't say missed opportunity or missed a beat. They say things like, I wish we had leveraged that in a way that was bigger. All of that research, all of that auto, knowledge and know-how, all of that design. Why didn't we take that to, do all these other things with? And why didn't we?
That's a hard question. I mean, there's one school of thought that says we rested on our laurels. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think to some extent they're just business cycles. And we rode that business cycle pretty darn well. And, now Silicon Valley kind of got lucky that the next business cycle is around semiconductors and information technology that are unleashed by the advanced computing power that they helped to develop. So you could make the argument that we shoulda. I think, if anything, what I would say is we should have made longer-term investments here in the state. We had a great university system, and it's still a good one, but we've been disinvesting in it for a generation or more, and it's starting to struggle to attract students and faculty and to keep our students here at a reasonable cost. We don't have a train system anymore. We have no mass transit. We don't have a lot of the things that folks, bringing it full circle, like Amazon, when they look at that list of things that are on there, they're largely quality of life issues, and we decided to follow a model like the folks in Mississippi and Alabama that we're going to race to the bottom.
That's because everybody here is from Mississippi and Alabama.
Well, but there's a reason why they left, right? They came up here where we were making long-term investments in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, and then since the 80s we stopped. And that's catching up with us as we turn into Mississippi.
Well, let's take a call from April. April, you're on line one with Rochelle Riley.
Hi. Just wanted to tell you I just love your show. But I have to agree with your guest. I think what Michigan and Detroit did was do the race to the bottom. If you look in the past when you've had major corporations like Amazon or Apple look or go to different cities or look to go to different cities, they're looking for an educated workforce, quality of life, livability, good schools, good, and also access to good higher education, good universities, good colleges, and so forth. So you'll see a lot of companies who have either set up shop in places like Chicago, Denver, Dallas, Atlanta, because they have all of that at their fingertips.
And they're continuing to invest in it.
And they continue to invest in their communities. And that's what Detroit and Michigan is going to have to do. They're going to have to start investing in their communities and making people feel like this is a place to come.
That's
where they can actually.
April, what's the three-letter word you didn't mention in a whole list of things that businesses are looking for?
Right.
The three-letter word you didn't mention is tax.
Tax.
Everyone says, oh, low tax, low tax, low tax. You just listed like 20 good reasons, and if you survey actual decision makers at corporations about what they're choosing, you hit the list almost in order. It was pretty impressive. I thought for a second there you were reading a list of the things that decision makers want.
They look for low taxes. They look for tax abatements. They look for tax deals, but they also look where they can actually.
No, you're right. They almost never say taxes are important. They always say all those things that taxes buy are what's important. Right. They want an educated workforce. Correct. The cost of a workforce is important to them as well, and we struggle a little bit there with a legacy of more expensive labor. But almost everything else we have an advantage in, and it's got nothing to do with tax or cost. It has to do with quality of life, amenities, et cetera.
April, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Atlanta.
Atlanta, well, welcome. And do you think that Detroit has a shot at this now that you've taken a look at the list, and looked at the New York Times, if you had analysis of what's going on?
I think they have a long shot, to be honest, because if you look around in the list and the other cities that are on the list, they have everything we just talked about, livability, educated workforce. I mean, so Detroit is going through a great resurgence, and I actually just visited Detroit for a family reunion there in August, and I was really impressed of how the city is really coming back. But when you had a person on your show, I think it was last week, that talked about you're still struggling with the demographic, where only 20% have either some type of college or college education, and then you also suffer from a brain drain. Most of the people graduating from your colleges don't stay in Michigan, they leave.
That's what you were just talking about, Ned, and that's a part of that. Thank you so much, April, for calling in to the Rochelle Riley Show. God, we need to hire her and bring her here.
Well, that's what I want to say is, we need people like April to come here, come back here. There are a lot of boomerangs, folks that went to Michigan universities, that grew up around here, that have left, and some of them come back, but a lot of them don't. We don't have as much inertia as a lot of other places do.
And this was the thing that I can't get, that I just haven't been able to understand. We know the types of things that people want. We know the types of things that get young people to go somewhere, but we haven't been willing to provide that stuff here so they'll stay. And then we ask, well, why are you leaving? I've never quite understood that.
Well, there's a group of people that think the answer is if we just keep cutting taxes, people will come here. And they'll hold up an example here and an example there. They'll say, well, Florida has no income tax, and everyone goes there. They're not going there. I mean, yeah, I can find you a person who went there for the income tax. Tiger Woods is there because there's no income tax. But we ain't Tiger Woods, right?
You. And
they
you
went
could
there
find one. I couldn't find one.
There are lots of other reasons why they're going to a Florida or a Texas or a California, and it isn't low taxes. Definitely not California.
I talk to young college graduates all the time, and not one of them says, well, I want to take this job here because of taxes.
Nope. They don't even think about it.
No.
I know when I moved to Chicago after college, it had nothing to do with the tax rate.
I moved to Dallas for my first out-of-state job, and I didn't know until I got there that they didn't have a state income tax, and I thought I'd won the lottery. I'm like, oh, that's a great bonus.
Well, it's interesting. It's one of those things that everyone, there are a lot of people that say it's taxes, it's taxes, it's taxes. Ask them what tax rate they're paying. They don't know.
They don't know.
They have no idea. So if you lowered it a point or raised it a point, would they know? Probably not.
If you want to join the conversation on the Rochelle Riley Show, call 313-209-9000. I have one last question for you, Ned, and you look nervous.
Oh, no, I'm nervous. That sounds. Is there a wrong answer? If I get it right, do I not get to come back? Is that it?
You will get a prize, and you must come back.
All right, a prize.
If Detroit had to pick, if you're talking to the leaders of industry, or even talking to people in Detroit, what is the most important thing that Detroit is offering the world right now?
Ooh, what's Detroit offering the world? Oh, opportunity.
Yes. Like that.
Oh, man, Dan Gilbert. That's like Dan Gilbert's trademark, isn't it? Oh, I've been brainwashed. It's wonderful.
Oh, my gosh. We're drinking the Kool-Aid. Wait, here, have some Kool-Aid.
Excellent, yeah.
But, I mean, we say that and we tease about that a little bit, but literally, if everybody embraces this idea that we could be whatever we want to be next, and opportunity is endless, then that actually is it. And everybody can't say that. Because these places that already have things in place, they already know what their systems are. You can't come in and do like a whole makeover. But in Detroit,
no, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. I think what's really important from a sort of city planning and city leaders perspective is that we remember that this new opportunity for all of us won't be successful unless the hundreds of thousands of people that are already here get to participate in the rebirth that's starting to happen. That's really key, is that you can't have 7 square miles of prosperity in a 140 square mile city and think you're going to have sustainable growth. It just doesn't work that way. So we need to learn our lessons from the past and make sure that Detroit's future is open and accessible with opportunities for everybody.
You should run for office.
I've done that already. I'm out of that business for a while. Yeah.
Well, before you go, we're going to take a call from Karen. Karen, you're on the Rochelle Riley Show. Karen?
Rochelle, this is Karen. Thank you for taking my call. I'm most interested in both of your comments about your first jobs out of college took you out of the place where your home was. It sounded as if. And I think one of the challenges for the city of Detroit is to really get out of some siloed thinking. And that applies to auto industry as well. I worked at Ford Motor Company for many years as a manager, and they finally overcome the notion of being individual functions, marketing, sales, product development, and how to work across functions. But if you tie college and people coming back to the city to the autos, one idea is that to keep people here, because college graduates often go out of state, is to say, well, Ford, GM, or Chrysler, if you agree to buy one of our vehicles for the next 5 years and stay in the state, we will reduce the cost of owning a vehicle by 60%. So you don't have to worry about car insurance. You don't have to worry about certain things. But if you stay here, make that commitment. So we have to figure out kind of creative ways to build, to retain. And that's just one idea to solve one problem, which is retaining our graduates from all of our universities, from leaving the state. And one of the things is just opportunities, and they come with a cost. So that's all I've got for today. I love the show. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate that. And
I have a thought on that. Karen, I want to say you're brilliant, okay? Going back to the Amazon example, I mentioned that we're going to, everyone in the country is going to offer them all kinds of incentives. If we start from the premise that people and talent are our most important asset in the 21st century economy, then we want more people here and more educated and talented and trained people here. Why don't we treat them like companies? Why don't we try to attract them the same way we attract companies? Why don't we say you use the autos as someone to do it, but why not the state government? Why don't we say if you go back to school and get trained, we'll give you a TIF on your income increase. You don't have to pay taxes on the increase in income for the first couple of years. You get to keep that. That's what we say to companies all the time. Why don't we think about people the same way we think about companies? Because you know what? Companies aren't people.
That's fantastic. You heard that from Ned Stabler, CEO of TechTown, who was with me tonight on the Rochelle Riley Show. Ned, I want to thank you so much for being here. You were awesome.
Thanks for having me, and congrats on the show. Happy to come back whenever.
Trust me, I'll call you every week. Thank you again. You're listening to the Rochelle Riley Show on 910 AM Superstation. We have been talking about Amazon and whether Amazon can come, whether they should come, whether we can convince them to come, whether it's only going to happen if Jeff Bezos wants to go down in history as one of the men who helped save Detroit and help create things here that we needed here. Do we treat him like the Olympics? Do we treat future employees like they're who we're recruiting? Like Ned said, we want young people to come. We want them to be a part of what's happening in Detroit. Then what are we going to do for them? Because we haven't done much except make it harder to live in Detroit. We had some millennials on earlier this week who talked about how they couldn't afford to buy a car, how they had to struggle to, make ends meet, but how they want to live in the city. They want to be in the city and be a part of the city. And I know what that feels like. We're going to take a call now from Kelly on line 1. Kelly, you're on the Rochelle Riley Show. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Rochelle. Hi.
Hi. You're on with Rochelle Riley.
How are you, Rochelle? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. Hi.
Oh, okay. Hi. I just tuned in and I heard like the previous 5-6 minutes of the conversation, but I heard Ned offer the option of, why don't we start treating people like businesses in terms of the incentives? And I agree with that to an extent, but the problem that you run into with that is you go back to what about the other people in the 140 square miles? What type of incentives are they getting? Because there's not enough retooling or retraining, so to speak, of the droves of individuals in the city that need that to be able to take advantage of these tech industry jobs. So in my opinion, you're just creating a deeper hole for the city in terms of trying to erase the image that they're not trying to help the individuals that have already been here if you're going to just offer incentives to get new people here. And eventually you're going to end up like you are now with a whole class of people that feel completely left out, because you have a lot of Detroiters here like myself that have been here all my life, but we can't take advantage of a lot of the incentives, whether it be housing incentives, rental incentives. We can't take advantage of any of that because we already live here.
Thank you so much, Kelly. That is such a good point, and I appreciate your comment and your question. And, you're absolutely right, and I have said this several times, and I'm going to say it again. Detroit and all of its leaders have got to figure out a way to make sure that they are honoring and working with all those folks who held Detroit down when it was down. There are plenty of people who have worked and struggled and stayed when other people left their property, waiting for that day when they could come back and make money off of it, or waiting for that day when things got better. And there are a lot of new people who are moving in, and we don't want their Detroit to be the only Detroit, as if Detroit didn't already exist. That's what's building up some of this resentment, and that's one of the things that we talked about last week with Dan Gilbert, because, he quite frankly was talking with other developers about what could possibly derail the Renaissance, and the answer was social unrest. It's people feeling like they're not a part of it. You don't want to bring it up and you don't want to talk about it, but it's fair, and it's a concept that we have to deal with, because, you've got to train and make sure that you are providing training for people who are already here, and there's nobody better to talk about that than my next guest, who is one of my favorite people, because he took over for a dear friend of mine, the late Eleanor Jositis, who was running a place called Focus Hope. And they are training people for jobs in ways that a lot of other folks don't. They've been doing it for a long time. They've got some special programming coming up. And I am thrilled to welcome Jason Lee, President and CEO of Focus Hope, to the Rochelle Riley Show.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Oh, my God, I'm so glad you're here. We've been trying to get this going, and it's just thrilling to have you here to talk about what you're doing. First of all, tell our listeners, and a lot of them have to already know, but what Focus Hope does.
So Focus Hope is a 49-year-old nonprofit in the city of Detroit. We're on Linwood and Oakman is our main campus. We also have 3 other satellite locations where we actually distribute food. But when we talk about Focus Hope today, we're talking about really 3 areas. We are around food, careers, and community. Food, we serve 41,000 seniors per month in providing what's called commodity food programs in partnership with the Department of Agriculture. And this is not Meals on Wheels. These are groceries that help seniors in terms of helping promote an independent lifestyle and providing them critically needed food and supplies. It's a huge operation. We've been we're a national leader in this space, and it's just tremendous amount of work and opportunity that we've been able to provide such as important community in the city of Detroit. If you think about it, the largest population in the city of Detroit are seniors, and there's a lot of them that really need the help that we provide at Focus Hope. From a career perspective, we are very involved with workforce training and development in the city of Detroit. I know you had Ned on earlier, and working with organizations such as the city of Detroit, the state of Michigan, the federal government, as well as many of the corporations, we provide what's called workforce readiness and pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programming. Everyone wants to have the opportunity to sustain themselves and maybe raise a family. But unfortunately, for various reasons, whether it's the challenges around our education system, which we haven't fixed, systematic poverty, racism, there's a lot of people who need help. They need hope. And Focus Hope has been providing that for 49 years in the city. And our workforce readiness programs, we take you where you are. Whether you have some challenges in terms of reading and mathematics, whether you've never touched a computer before, whether you're coming out of the prison system, we take you where you are, and we can provide you some resources and training so that you can go out and be job ready. We work in areas of soft skills in terms of presentation, in terms of academic preparation, in terms of conflict resolution. Sometimes in the workplace, things don't go the way that you want them to. So how do you react to that? Who do you talk to? So we work in that space, and also time management. And those are the big pieces there. And then we've also adopted the 100 square blocks around our main campus on Linwood and Oakland. We call it the Hope Village Initiative, where we are supporting economic development, education, and environment and safety.
Now, see, who is doing all of that besides Focus Hope? I tell you, I have been over there to, I've been there many times. I hosted the gala last year, and I issued this challenge, which, we're going to kick off a little later this year, where somebody stood up and said, well, I'm going to donate $50,000. And I went, okay, well, I'm going to donate $50 and get 1,000 people to match that so that we can do that same thing. So we're going to be doing that. Look out for that. But I can remember going to the food program, and these seniors very proudly and very matter-of-factly walked through a grocery store type setting where they picked up their food and got what they needed and went. And I love that, that sense of independence and pride and, what it's supposed to be like. I thank Focus Hope for what they've been doing for all of these years. I want people to really, really make sure that they're supporting efforts like this. And you've been listening to Jason Lee, the CEO and president of Focus Hope, talk about what they do. And I want to thank you for coming by to do that.
Well, thank you.
We're going to be staying in touch.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I also just want to, we had our open house last week, but this week we are still bringing in people who are interested in our workforce training programs. Come by Focus Hope, Linwood and Oakman. We are on the bus lines, or go to our website, focushope.edu, and get all the information that you need. We're doing great.
We'll make sure to do it. And remember what Kelly said. We've got to make sure that we're providing opportunities for the people who are already here, people who have been holding it down, not just everybody we want to convince to come to Detroit. There's a Detroit that's here already. Let's support it. You've been listening to the Rochelle Riley Show on 910 AM Superstation. I'm here every Monday through Friday from 6 to 7. Thanks for joining me tonight.
You don't need nobody help. You gotta be fine with yourself. You need nobody else. You need time to yourself. You need nobody else. On the grind by yourself. Never lie to yourself. Always try to excel. Now you hide.